The NFL is figuring it out. And this is funny, Chris, because I'm going to peel back the curtain a little bit on the industry that we're in. When momentum starts to build towards something big happening, the producers and editors who supervise the insiders start pushing them and prodding them to come up with something, right? You got to have something. You got to have more. We got to push the envelope. We got to move this story forward. And yesterday, it was starting to look like we're going to have a new CBA. We'd been putting out items over the past few days that were aimed at getting people comfortable with the idea that it's coming. Yesterday, mid-afternoon, Mike Silver of the NFL reported that owners had been summoned to New York for a meeting related to the CBA. That momentum is there toward getting it done. And then last night, boom, Shefty drops the bomb that the playoffs under the new CBA would expand from 12 teams to 14. Here's the thing. ESPN reported that on Super Bowl Sunday. Right. It was buried in a longer item about the CBA meetings and the NFLPA holding a vote on whether or not to go to 17 games. It was there. Right. Plain as day. It was a bullet point in the article. So this has been out there, but nobody noticed it. So, hey, smart work by ESPN to dust that off and present it as something new, even though it isn't. The point is this, and now I'm going to put the curtain back in place. 14 playoff teams instead of 12 will be part of this new CBA if and when it's ratified. Nobody's really paid attention to that because we've been so caught up in 17 regular season games. So I ask you, Chris Simms, as a preliminary matter, your reaction to the news that now, instead of the 1 seed and the 2 seed having a bye right out of the gates in the wild card round, the 2 seed will be playing the 7th seed, and only the 1 seed will have wild card weekend off.
Well, I mean, as you know, I'm very conservative / traditionalist with like football and stuff like this. I know, yep. I've made it be known that I don't really want 17 games. I didn't like when I heard that it was going to be like 8 teams in each conference, right, that might go to the playoffs. That was being bounced around for a little bit. I'll say this. I could deal with this. I could live with this. I actually think I like it the more I think about it. Okay?
Why?
Well, the first thing is this. To give only one team a first-round bye is going to make the regular season, which is already very important and intense compared to other sports, that much more important. I mean, it just takes one more team off of the fight for a first-round bye, which will add to better competition and teams being under pressure more to get that first-round bye. Because as we've seen here in recent history, teams with the 1 or 2 seed in that first-round bye we're talking about, their chances of getting to the Super Bowl are very high. So I just think from that, the competitive nature there, it makes it more fun for the regular season for everybody to jockey for that first-round bye. And also, I don't think you're flooding it. I can take one extra team. I think, okay, a lot of years, there's the years we look at the schedule and the standings and we go, ooh, that team was a playoff team and they missed out. Now this year, I don't know if we really had that, but most years we do. And I'm okay with that. And I think this will add some good fanfare come wild card weekend and the rest of the playoffs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. The number 1 seed becomes even more important if that's the only team that's getting a bye, because that team will have played 1 game before getting to the conference championship, assuming they win. The Ravens know firsthand that that's not a guarantee.
Right.
But when you consider, Chris, the fact that 7 straight Super Bowls have been played by teams that had first-round byes, and 4 of the 7 Super Bowls have been games involving 2 number 1 seeds.
Yeah.
I think that when they make this change, I'm done saying when they make this change to 14, if we have 5 straight Super Bowls where it's 1 seed versus 1 seed, and we see what an advantage it is for that team, not the week of the divisional round game, but the week of the conference championship when they're hosting the 2 seed,
right,
which will have played 2 games already. I think what's going to happen is fans and media are going to start saying, let's just go ahead and finish the deal here and go with 16 teams. And the owners will be like, well, if you insist, because they recognize that expanding it to 8 games of playoff football wild card weekend is going to be worth even more money than going from 4 games to 6 games.
Yeah, well, that's where it scares me, because that's where you drowned out the product, all right? That's where a 7-9 Denver Broncos team gets into the playoffs, and they weren't a playoff team this year. So I don't like that. They're pushing the limit to the very edge with me with 7 teams in each conference. Now, your point about the first round bye is very real. You're right. I think if we get 3, 4, 5 years down the road and we find that, wow, it's been the first seed versus the first seed in every Super Bowl, then there's issues, and they got to figure it out. And I don't know if I necessarily like the fact of going to 8 teams per conference, but you're right. This is probably a bit of a master plan to get people to say that. I hope that's not the case. And like you said, the number 1 seed can lose. We've seen Baltimore do that. And when we first started, back 2000, really when the Giants went on their run, we saw a number of wild card teams, right, who went to the Super Bowl and made runs throughout the playoffs. So I don't think it's crazy here. We're just in a little stretch right now where the 1 and 2 seeds are dominating. I don't know why that is. I don't have a reason for it. But I do think that's the number 1 negative to me, Mike, you hit on. That does scare me, that it's just going to be number 1 seed versus number 1 seed in the Super Bowl year after year after year. And I don't necessarily like that either.
And, the other thing about going all the way to 8 teams per conference, and we can't say that the regular season would have played out this way, because being aware that there are playoff berths on the line and maybe going into that last weekend, you've got a different approach than you otherwise did. There were 4 teams tied at 7 and 9. So, you're still going to have, wherever that cutoff is, there's going to be a scrum for that last playoff spot. And what it does, Chris, by expanding the playoff field, it pulls more teams that otherwise are out of it into the conversation.
Yes, I know.
To have relevant games late in the year. And that's part of what the NFL is looking for here. Even though a lot of these stadiums are sold out in advance, you want people to show up in late December. And if their team is still alive, they're more likely to show up and spend too much money on beer and too much money on, merchandise and food and everything else. You need people to actually be there for those games. And there's a list of all the teams
I get it,
number 7 seeds for the last 10 seasons.
I don't like it, though. I don't like that as far as, what you're saying. First out, I think it, kind of drowns out the product if you get too many teams involved in the playoffs, in the conversation. I know we're in the era of like, hey, everybody's got to get a blue ribbon. And, I understand that. Everybody's got to get a trophy. It's fair. But, I mean, I don't want that. And I honestly...
But there's still half the teams aren't going to make it. Instead of 20 not making it, 16 don't make it.
Yeah.
16 do, if and when they go to an 8-team per conference playoff format, which I feel like is going to be in the next CBA after this one.
But we go into the playoffs every year, okay? And really, most years, we look at the field, and right now it's 12 teams, and we really only go, these 3 or 4 are the only real teams that can win the Super Bowl. Most years, that's really what we do. We went into the playoffs this year, and we basically knew, we were like, all right, the 49ers, the Ravens, right? We knew that. We knew Kansas City was in the conversation. And really, I think New England might have been the 4th team this year. I don't know if we were all in on Green Bay. I think a lot of us were hesitant on Green Bay. So to me, to add another team to that conversation, let alone let it be like an 8 seed or a 7 seed in the NFC against a 2 seed, and now a 2 seed who might have lost a tiebreaker, right, in a really close game or whatever, and didn't become the 1 seed, their team gets extra beat up and, of course, gets endangered more with injuries and things like that. And I worry about that hurting the quality of the playoffs and that as well.
And see, that's the thing. It's not just about, the idea that you get forced to play another game, and even if it's going to be like, I'm trying to make my point here and I'm having trouble with it. This relates to going ahead the rest of the way and moving to 16 teams. Even if the 1 seed will be a 20-point favorite over the 8th seed, making the 1 seed play a game. That's the point. I knew I'd finally get there. You have to expose your guys to injury. You have to get ready for that game. You don't get a week off. So you're not going to be as rested as the other teams. And I mean, look at it this way. The Chiefs this year, if they had this 7 seed in play, they would have had to play the Steelers wild card weekend. And they probably would have beaten the Steelers, right? Maybe easily, because Duck Hodges versus Patrick Mahomes. We love you, Duck, but Patrick Mahomes. But the Chiefs, when it comes time to play in the conference championship game, you're carrying around that fatigue.
Yeah.
You're carrying around possible injuries that come from the game you didn't have to play. That's where it becomes a disadvantage to the 2 seed and necessarily an advantage to the 1 seed.
A huge disadvantage for the 2 seed. And even a mismatch like you're talking about, the Chiefs, the Steelers. One thing we know is the Steelers still got defense, right? And they can hit you and they can knock your head off. And then, we get in that game where a team where we go, they were ugly 7-9 this year or whatever, and they're in the playoffs. And yeah, they knocked Travis Kelce, out because he was over the middle and he got crushed, and now he can't play the next week. And that's where I worry about it. I worry about bad teams affecting the teams who have earned the right to be in the cream of the crop, I guess, is what I'm saying here. And I don't know.
Any given Sunday.
I know. Any given Sunday, right. And that's where I think it is a little scary.
And remember, we brought this up during the playoffs. We love to see an upset. We love to see chaos. But then after the chaos, we're left with a team that has no business being there.
Yes, right.
That we're deprived of the clash of the Titans. And this is what I'm wrestling with. You become the number 1 seed in each conference, and everybody else has to play in the wild card round. And it creates an even greater advantage to being the number 1 seed. But what it also does is it sets the stage for 1 versus 1 in the Super Bowl. And everybody else has a chance, and maybe sometimes the 1 seed will lose. But we're still going to get, more often than not, the 2 best teams from either conference in the Super Bowl. And when the Super Bowl arrives, we're going to like that. We're not going to like it during because there's going to be less uncertainty, less surprise, less sense of compelling football and any given Sunday and all that, but we are going to like it when we're getting ready for the Super Bowl.
Well, yeah, I hear you there because you're right. We want to see the Super Bowl. You want to see great versus great. Like, you made up a good example, right? Like, it was really cool back in 1994 to see the San Diego Chargers upset the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? To have the right to go play the Cowboys in the Super Bowl, or the 49ers in the Super Bowl, right? But when the game was over and the Chargers won, you went, the Chargers have no chance of beating the San Francisco 49ers.
Stan Humphries versus
You
Steve
knew it right
Young.
away.
Yeah.
It was really like inevitable. You felt like that Super Bowl was like, well, just how many are the 49ers going to win by? Are they going to win by 10 or are they going to win by 30? What is it going to be? And ultimately, would they win by 23, 49, 26, something like that? So, yes, that scares me. And it does, it greatly tips the balance, like you're saying, between 1 and 2. And, again, yes, we like to see 1 versus 1 in the Super Bowl, but 1 versus 1 isn't always the best matchup. Some years the number 2 seed truly is the best team, and maybe their best player got banged up for a few weeks. And, then they ended up tying the number 1 seed, but lost the tiebreaker. And man, to be 13-3 and lose the tiebreaker and be the 2 seed, and then have to go play on Wild Card Weekend, I don't know if that necessarily seems right to me. I'm having a hard time, I guess, digesting that part.
You can chime in if you choose on Twitter. We've got a poll question, and we have framed it as, how many teams do you want per conference? 6 or 7 or 8? And 6 is the landslide winner so far.
I get it.
Not that it matters. Not that we care. I didn't vote 6. Who's voting on my Twitter account? I didn't vote on this, although I would probably vote for 6, 62.7%. But in second place is 8. See, that's the thing. 7 feels like a half measure that is temporary. Just like 17 regular season games is temporary. We're going to have 18 regular season games and 16 playoff teams and maybe more NFL teams by the time it's all said and done, which is a separate can of worms because there aren't enough quarterbacks to go around.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.